All right, we're going to break down in today's video the 2022 Detroit Lions draft class. We're going to go through player by player, talk about each of them, give kind of a grade on them. Also, what can we assess from Brad Holmes' ability to select talent based only on his time with the Detroit Lions? With the 2021 draft and 2022, obviously we're in the back half of it now, so it's fair to probably say other than Jameson Williams, we can give some grades and assessments. So let's get into all that and maybe just a little bit more in today's Lions Talk Live. Well, greetings and salutations to everybody out there in YouTube land. I'm your host once again, Dan Thornton, and I'm going to be breaking down the Detroit Lions 2022 draft class on an off Sunday for our beloved Detroit Lions team. Hope you're all having a good day. Hope you're all resting and relaxing from the holiday weekend. But we're going to get into a deep dive into each of these players, assess how we're doing with them, and we're going to start off with the first of two number one picks. We're going to dive into Aidan Hutchinson. Real quick, before we get into Aidan Hutchinson and his rookie season so far, if you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, please consider doing so. I get it takes you about a second and a half to hit that subscribe button, but also maybe leave a thumbs up, like, whatever you want to call it, and some comments on each of the selections from this year's draft class. All three of these metrics will help us grow the channel, help us bring more content to you. So if you have 2.5 seconds, if you can hit both those buttons, I sure would be grateful and thankful. My goal for, let's say by next Sunday against Jacksonville, to get the channel to 500 subscribers. Now, let's dive into the video. So here we are, just the back end of the 2022 schedule. We can see that Aidan Hutchinson has made some improvements throughout his rookie campaign. But what can we say? Did we get value out of him versus other possibilities at the number 2 pick? I'm not going to do such a deep dive that we can say, hey, if we would have taken Sauce Gardner, he would be far better. Because let's be fair, with any player, they're going to be reliant upon the people around them to impact the game. Are we going to break down the Jets and say, hey, because they're front 7 and, they're back 4, Sauce is playing better or worse than he would in Detroit? How would Hutchinson have done if he went to Jacksonville or New York or wherever? Let's just stick to, when we're evaluating these players, how they're doing here in this system with the players and coaching staff around them. I think if we can do that, we can save us all from having to do a 3-week video on each person. Let's get started. So here's what we can say about Hutchinson. He's got enormous size, wingspan, his athleticism. I've watched him a little bit in college at Michigan. I'd say he was athletic. Was I going to say he was over the top athletic, the top, 3 to 5% of all human beings? No, he's not that guy, in my opinion. But here's what we can say. He is upper echelon when it comes to strength, balance, ability to pick up plays and learn. I mean, I've said before, I think he reminds me a ton of Bruce Smith. I think he's got a very similar physical setup as far as the upper body, the hips, the leg strength, the width of hands, the length of arms, all those metrics. So over time, do I think he's going to ever become a 16, 15, 12 sacks per year person? I think 12 is possible, but I think if you're going to ask him to do 15 or 16 a year, that's going to probably be a reach. But who knows? These are just my thoughts right now. We can all say he's picked off far more passes than probably anybody projected a down lineman to do in the rookie year. So here we are with just, a few games left, 6 games left. He's got 5.5 sacks. He's got, a bunch of tackles, a lot of pressures. I mean, he is leading the rookie class in pressures, and he's actually, I guess you say, top third of the NFL in as far as pressures. Now, obviously, pressures means he's getting to the quarterback. He's just not getting him down for sacks. Some of that, could we say that if the secondary was tighter, that, you'd have that extra half second to get some sacks? I think that's be fair to say, and something the Lions are going to actually have to address in the future is tightening up their defensive secondary. But sticking with just Hutchinson, we can say he's got all the raw materials to say he was a sound pick at number 2. And I'm going to give each player a grade, and here's my grade with him based on just my expectations for a rookie performer. I'm going to give him a D-. I don't think there is an A+ player in this year's draft, especially in the first round. But I do think he did a lot of things great. We'll see what happens in the final few games. Maybe he can knock that up to a B, but I think we got good value for him and a player we can build around for the future. Not going to really talk about Jameson Williams yet, because right now anything we say about him is just going to be all hype. We haven't actually seen him in the preseason, the regular season, so only things we can assess him by are what we saw from him during his collegiate career. I'm going to say this, in the national championship game, was he running by everybody out there? Yes, there wasn't a single player on the field for either team that could keep up with him, match him, or even slightly below his speed. So we can say this, when he hits the field, assuming the repair on the knee and the ACL is sound, it's been my anticipation, even though he's moving up a level as far as the athletic ability and everything around him at the NFL is going to be that much bigger, faster, and stronger, we're going to be able to say this. It's going to be hard for 95% of the players to be equal to him. And if they're not equal to his speed, he's going to be leaving them all behind. It'll be interesting to see what they do, but it's my anticipation come next weekend, we're going to see him hit the field against Jacksonville. The other parts we could say about J-Mo is, he's got decent size, not great, not below average. He's got fair size for an NFL wide receiver. He doesn't have huge mass. He doesn't appear to have huge leaping ability and those things. His skill set is simply speed and his ability to route run. He was actually a pretty good route runner. If you watch him get in and out of breaks, reverse pivot, things of that sort on the field, I'd say this, coming out of college, not at the NFL level, but coming out of college, he's definitely above grade, above average, all that. Scale 1 to 10, I'm going to say he's, about a 7.5, maybe if you want to say just below an 8, I guess. As far as route running ability to get open, whether that just comes from mechanics or speed, he's going to be tough for most people to guard. So for right now, let's just give him a grade of an incomplete until we see him. All right, let's move on to Josh Paschal. We had to wait, the first almost half of the season to see him on the field. But even though he's been out the last few games because he hurt his knee, here's what we can say for him. Does he have strong balance? Great upper body strength? Does he have a motor? Does he have the ability to push most offensive linemen and gain leverage over them? From all those standpoints, right off the bat, I'd say if I had to give him a grade from, again, 1 to 10, I'm going to give him an 8. Now, Hutchinson is about the same when it comes to those traits. Hutchinson has some further abilities just from God-given genetics, the height, the size, the arm length, things of that sort. But what Paschal also has that Hutchinson doesn't is I think he can shed blocks already better than Hutchinson. You watch how he wins the hand battle. He's able to get his shoulder down a little bit better. And some of that's he's shorter. He's able to get underneath a lot of offensive linemen. So from that standpoint, I think he's actually superior than Aidan Hutchinson at this point in his career. But the other part about Paschal that we're going to have to take into account is here it is, 2 times in his rookie campaign. I get the sports hernia surgery. It was a pre-existing condition, and one I don't really think anybody's horribly worried about. It's not like a knee or a back or something of that sort. It's something that's been corrected. He had to sit out for the first X amount of games to recover from that surgery. The knee injury, hey, it's football. People are going to hit you in the knees. You're going to get injured. So while he's had 2 injuries in his rookie campaign, and we probably do need to take note of it, it's not something I'm not saying is a long-term worry at this point. But as far as what he can do, he can help stuff the run with some of the best players on our team. Not worried about other teams, on our team. He's great at that. He's also, what surprised me is his ability to get so many pressures on the quarterback. He's actually able to shed blocks like we talked about and get penetration quickly. He doesn't have elite speed. He's, I'd say, just slightly over average at his position, but with his above average abilities and strength, upper body, and ability to shed blocks, he could become a problem for the future. So with Paschal, I'm going to say this. Looking at all of his metrics, where we got him at as far as a second-round pick, and that does affect how I think somebody should be graded. Did you get great value out of that pick? Did you have to reach for the pick? And what are their long-term implications as far as their ability to impact the team? So with Paschal, I'm going to say this. I'm going to give him an actual B+. Now, does that mean he's better than Aiden Hutchinson? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying because of where we got him at in the draft, the value is super strong for him. So I'm going to say right now, B+, and I think we got a great pick there. All right, let's get on to the third round pick, Kerby Joseph. Here's a guy that I'm going to say right off the bat. He's got instincts that you and I and no coach, no fan or whatever can teach. The guy simply gets it. He picks up things quickly. He's got a high IQ, high reaction skills. I mean, I get we lost the Buffalo game, but if you go back and watch that video of that last pass, or I shouldn't say the last pass, but the pass that set up the final drive for the Bills, Kerby Joseph is less than half of a second from tipping that ball. He's 1/25th of a second away from being able to say he's probably taking it to the house going the other way, or at least getting a significant, pick return yardage. I think this guy is going to be special. He's got hands, he's got hip power, reactionary skills. He's, you watch his hips when he switched his directions. You can tell at one point he used to be a wide receiver because this cat can move and he's got agility beyond the vast majority of players in the NFL. I'm going to say as far as just his athletic abilities, God-given stuff, he's in the top 5% in my opinion. So if we're able to look at Joseph and say just from athletics, from, speed, quickness, ability to change direction, strength, ability to deliver blows, all those matrix, he's in the top 5% from that point. Now you look at his instincts, and as he's getting more experience in games, how his instincts are increasing. His IQ, his understanding of offensive schemes, be able to anticipate routes or whatever it may be. I think he's going to end up being an incredibly rare safety. I know I've compared him before to Ed Reed, maybe a little bit of John Lynch in there as far as his ability to hit, Reed's ability to break on passes, and not that Reed couldn't hit, but anyways, as far as Kerby Joseph, I'm going to say this. This guy, I think, has the most upside potential of anybody in this year's draft class for the Lions. It's my anticipation when we look back at him, whenever his career comes to an end, he's going to be a consideration for the Ring of Honor for the Detroit Lions. All right, now we're going to drop down to our next selection, fifth round pick, James Mitchell. You've heard me talk about him when T.J. Hockenson was traded. I thought a big part of that was because of Brock Wright's abilities to play the tight end position, what he does well versus Hockenson. The other part, like I pointed out, was James Mitchell. I think he's got great size. I think he's a phenomenal run blocker. He's not as developed in the passing game as Hockenson is, and probably, I'm not going to put pressure on him and say he ever will be Hockenson in the passing game, but he's got great value as far as where we got him in the draft, what he does well, and that's run block. He run blocks incredibly well. The rest of this game is going to have to be developed. So is he ever going to be the fastest guy on the field? No. Is he ever going to be the strongest guy on the field? Probably not. But what he is above average in two metrics: size and run blocking. Strength, I would say he's above average, but he's not elite. So when you're drafting later in any sport, you're looking for key components, in my opinion, that you can say, hey, this guy far supersedes the majority of people here. I get by saying that puts a lot of pressure on him, but I'm just going to say this, hey, with great ability comes great responsibility, and I'm going to say this. I think as far as a value, the Lions got an A on this. Not quite an A+. I don't really want to give me that, but I can't really find huge faults in him. We are seeing normal rookie stuff where one game he's great, the next he's kind of average, and then he kind of is a little bit better the game after that. By the end of the year, we're going to be able to look at all these rookies, especially with the amount of playing time they're getting, and say, hey, for 2023, who are the people we expect to be leaders and to be able to build around? I think we can all agree Kerby Joseph probably isn't leaving the starting lineup unless it's because of an injury next year. So his cap and where he's going to go with more experience, more reps, more learned behaviors on the field, I think he's going to be one of the NFL's best by season 3. So as we look at Mitchell, we can say this. Again, with his run blocking, and his size, he far supersedes the vast majority of players in the NFL with those matrix. With his strength, while he doesn't supersede the vast majority, is he better than the average? And yes, he is. It's the other parts that he's not great at. Even though in college, let's be fair, this dude scored a lot of touchdowns. This dude caught a lot of passes and took them somewhere. But at the NFL level and recovering from a knee injury like, Jameson Williams, I think that kept a lot of people from drafting him at a higher round. My guess is if the knee injury doesn't happen, you can make an argument he was a late second round, third round pick. The injury did happen. A lot of teams backed off him because they didn't want to wait for him to recover. But that favored the Lions. The Lions knew they didn't need him right away, knew they could let him heal and develop. And because of that, I think they got a bit of a steal here. We'll see what happens in the future. But I'm going to say this right now. I think they got a D- out of this pick. It's my anticipation with him that as you see James Mitchell heal next year, he gets a little bit more polished from route running. There's real potential he could be the starting tight end. So let's look at the draft so far. You got a starting defensive end in Hutchinson. I'm going to guess that when Jameson Williams hits the field, at some point he's going to become a starter. So in your first round, you got two starters for you. Your second round pick, Pascal, is he's been a starter other than when he got the knee injury. So you got three starters. Now in your fifth round pick, you have the potential for a starting tight end. And right there, you've got four starters. And that's before we even talk about the rest of our draft. And obviously, spoiler alert, if you've watched the Detroit Lions this year, Malcolm Rodriguez is a starter as a sixth rounder. So think about how many starters you've gotten from one draft so far. All right, so before we get into Malcolm Rodriguez, we have to talk about the one guy who was drafted slightly before him. And that's James Houston. Yep, nobody had seen this guy until the Buffalo game. If you are a fan of watching him in college, then what I'm probably going to say isn't going to be a newsflash to you. One of the questions I had with the Detroit Lions prior to the Thanksgiving Day game is, what was the coaching staff saying to keep him not only off the active roster, but off the field? Let's be fair when assessing our team. We don't really have that it guy that can get to the quarterback. Hutchinson is our best sack person right now. And he's got 5.5 in 11 games. While he's not bad at getting the quarterback, he is getting a lot of chip blocks. He is not winning at a high rate a lot of the one-on-one battles. And then enters Houston. Houston in college was simply known as the problem. And why? It was hard to get anybody on another team to block this guy. When we took him finally and got him up to the active roster from the practice squad, it'll be my anticipation from here on out, there's no chance he's going back to the practice squad because somebody is going to take him. What makes him such a problem for other teams to block? His actual lack of size at an NFL level is a plus in the fact that on obvious passing downs, offensive linemen in the NFL, especially the tackles, tend to be 6'6" to 6'8", maybe 6'9" in a few cases. You've got a guy that is significantly smaller than the norm coming at him, who has some of the best ankle placement and flexibility you're going to see in the entire planet. We talked about with other guys being the top, potential 5% of athletes in the whole NFL. This cat is in the top 1% when it comes to flexibility, ankle placement, and the ability to drop the shoulder. No, he's not great at run stopping, which is why I would not, at this point, put him out there on obvious run plays. But pass plays are different. So if you want, and it's very limited sample size because he's only played a handful of snaps so far on the Lions, but we're going to want to see from the Detroit Lions coaching staff what kind of faith do they really have in him going forward the rest of the way. You might have a guy who doesn't play every down. He may not be a starter because from what I've seen of him in college and then, briefly here and there throughout things, he's not going to be great against the run at this point in his career because he just simply does not excel there. He's going to need a lot of time, a lot more weight room development for that to be a realistic possibility for him. But in obvious passing downs, you've got a guy with well above average speed. And like I said, he's got 3 matrix where he might be in the top 1% of anybody on this planet. And because of that, when NFL tackles come at him, he's going to be able to get around the vast majority of them very quickly and get to the quarterback fast. He's got closing speed. Coming back from behind on the opposite side over a mobile quarterback is something he's actually going to be able to do, and that's something we struggle greatly in. See what I'm talking about. If you get a free moment after this video, go look at the couple plays he had against the Bills. And the Bills, let's be fair, are no slouches on the offensive line or otherwise. He's able to beat a chip block on the first sack and then take on the tackle, get around him, and to Josh Allen in seconds. On the second play, not only does he win on the opposite side of the field, opposite of where Josh Allen is rolling, not only does he win the hand placement and dip under to get to and around the offensive tackle, but on a scrambling Allen, he's able to come from behind, catch him, and trip him up for his second sack. Keep in mind, he got both of his sacks in 5 defensive snaps. I brought up the question, I thought it was a coaching failure not to play him more in that game because it was clear both the right tackle and left tackle for the Bills couldn't block him. All right, so sticking in the 6th round, we got Malcolm Rodriguez, another value pick. Now, I'm going to speed this one up because I think it's pretty obvious. Anytime you get somebody in the 6th round who becomes a starter for you, especially at a position on defense, you got extreme value there. I'm going to give the Lions right off the bat before we even break down the who and why or any of that stuff. I'm going to give the Lions an A for this pick. Why? You got a starter in the 6th round when really you should just be getting depth players. But some of that is, let's be fair, the Lions linebackers are not good. So you were able to get somebody to start in a position later in the draft. That obviously means that you didn't have anybody to oppose him. But beyond that, Rodriguez has very, very, very good skills at shedding blocks. He's a little undersized at 5'10", 5'11". He's giving up a lot of weight, but you can see with his ability to use his hands, bend his body, dip below would-be larger blockers, he can cause a lot of problems for the vast majority of offensive linemen in the NFL. So as far as a grade goes, and I'm not going to give him an A+, I'm not going to give him an A, because while I do think we got extreme value for Houston, the problem is his run or ability to defend the run. He's a player that right now is going to be able to specialize on 3rd downs, I think. Or, maybe if it's, end of half, end of the game where it's obvious passing downs, he can play a 2nd and 3rd down or whatever have you. But I'm going to say this, he's a B+. And if you let him go back on the practice squad, somebody's taking him and saying, thank you for our early Christmas present. So it'd be my anticipation there's no way he's going back on the practice squad going forward. Let's go on to Malcolm Rodriguez, who I think I inadvertently said, was picked after Houston. He was picked before, but anyways, let's go on to him now. With Rodriguez going forward, whether, probably you're looking more towards his 2nd year, do you want to see continued growth in areas of strength? Shedding blockers, read and reacting on screens, things of that sort. Yes, they have used him more and more towards the middle of the year, going to where we are now as a blitzer. And I think he's excelling there because, again, going forward and attacking, Rodriguez is fairly good. It's backpedaling and understanding zone principles or coverages. He's just not great at, and especially with his lack of size, going up against tight ends who are typically 4, 5, maybe 6 inches taller. It's more difficult for him to contest those passes. But we got great value there. Now, let's go on to the last draft pick from the 2022 draft class for the Detroit Lions. Rodriguez, much like Houston, has areas he super exceeds at. He also has areas where he is less than average. So Rodriguez is great at any time he has to fill a gap, pick up responsibilities, and shed blockers. Usually this means in the running game, can he fill a hole? Can he shed a blocker? And can he shed the blocker to get to the runner? He's become better throughout the season at sniffing out screens. He is not great by any metrics in pass coverage. Like a lot of Detroit linebackers over the last 20 years, this is an area that most of them get roasted at. I actually like Jarrad Davis back in the day because I thought going forward, he's in the upper echelon in the NFL. It's when he has to drop back and cover somebody, read offenses, and then react to the play. He's not great. And Rodriguez, while hopefully he's never going to be that bad in the secondary, anytime he has to drop into zone or other coverages, it's just not something he can do at an average level right now. Going forward, attacking is something he does above average. So again, I'm going to give the Lions a strong grade here with an A. You got something in need and in a late round situation. So the last pick of the 2022 Detroit Lions draft was Chase Lucas. We could see them play a little bit in the preseason. He showed some promise, but preseason, let's be honest, is more often than not the JV or freshman team playing against the other team's JV or freshman team. Rare is it those guys, especially someone like Lucas, who's playing up against the actual starters. So I'm not going to dive into him too much because really anything we saw was in the preseason. He's been on the active roster for the games 3 times, and I think has a total of 8 snaps. The majority of them are on special teams. Does he have some good speed? Yes. Is it, upper echelon? No. Is it average? It's probably closer to the average than anything else, but I'm going to give him incomplete just because there's not enough tape on him yet, and I haven't really studied a bunch of his college stuff because at this point, he's not impacting the roster. So, this video is long enough as it is. I gave you guys some good thoughts. Moving on to the other topics. All right, well, it is your off Sunday as a Detroit Lions fan since we played on Thanksgiving. Hopefully, if you guys are bored and watching other games, you got a rooting guide, who to cheer on. If you're wanting the Lions to get a higher draft pick, or if you're wanting us to, contend further and further into the year for a possible playoff spot. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. If you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, please consider doing so. Leave your thoughts. Who would you say in the comment section below is the best value the Lions received out of the 2022 draft? I'd be interested to see what you both, what all of you guys say. Maybe even break down if you want, give your thoughts on why, what you think of some of the other players. I didn't really want to dive into what if we would have taken this person over that person because we didn't do that, and I'm only going to worry about the guys that are here. So anyways, hope you all subscribe, leave a thumbs up, take care, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you tomorrow on another Lions Talk Live.